hour has passed. Leave there your conveniences.
Fuck this. Fuck. Did you see this? Look at this.
Every now and then, a filmmaker comes along who fiercely divides opinion, who produces movies which gain almost cult-like status among some. And if you don't like those movies, then you're dismissed as a bit of a thickie. Robert Eggers appears to be one of these directors. Certainly there was a lot of hype surrounding Eggers' movie The Norseman. I thought it was pretty funny, but I honestly didn't get what all the fuss was about.
Don't bite.
In all seriousness, I did enjoy The Northman. It was a violent and bloody Viking revenge film. The imagery was great, a hallucinogenic mindfuck which at times had me wondering if I was fearing and loathing in Las Vegas. The movie was a slow burn, in my opinion, a bit too slow. There were times where I just wished Amleth would just get on with exacting his revenge. That said, there were many iconic moments, like the bloody crescendo in the volcano. But for me, I was confused why the film garnered such legendary status. Now for Eggers' latest project, he has remade Nosferatu, Murnau's 1922 silent movie about the reclusive Count Orlok, a vampire who becomes obsessed with the wife of his real estate agent. This is a film 10 years in the making, a film that has been a personal project for Eggers. So was it worth the wait? Well, not really. Let's start with the good. First off, the film looks absolutely stunning. The first 40 minutes in particular are breathtaking, slowly building the suspense as Hutter receives his assignment and embarks across country to visit the mysterious Count. The entire sequence plays out like a nightmare. The creepy horse and carriage that pulls up with the snow falling, its door flung open, sucking Hutter toward a living hell. The first scene at the castle when we first encounter Count Orlok is very well done. How Orlok keeps disappearing and reappearing. 1 minute he's on the stairs, barely a few steps ahead, and then in the turn of a corner, he is gone. Then in the dining chamber he's stood by the fireplace one moment, then he's playing bartender over Hutter's shoulder, and then he's seated at the head of the table reading Hutter's papers. What works so well about this scene is that we don't see Count Orlok. We only hear his deep rasping voice, and his laboured breathing through a tattered esophagus and rotten undead lungs. We only see him through the terror on John's face. We wonder what John is looking at, what could be so terrible, and what could drive so much fear into a mortal man. I myself was desperate to look through Hutter's eyes, to see what nightmarish vision Eggers and Bill Skarsgård had conjured up. Then my wish was granted, and we finally see Count Orlok. And that's when all the bad started. Who in their right mind decided to give Count Orlok a ridiculous tash and a comb-over? I suspect the filmmakers were trying to stay faithful to the original description of Dracula, to actually make him look like Vlad the Impaler, but for me he just looked comical. And because I found the design so amusing, I just couldn't take him seriously as a villain. He wasn't creepy or unsettling at all. I suppose at least his hairdo was better than Gary Oldman's in Dracula. Also, why did they make his character so ridiculously tall? Again, for me, it made him look a bit silly. I keep thinking back to the design of the original Count Orlok. There's a reason why he still invokes terror, why he has stood the test of time as an absolute horror icon. Yes, he looked strange and otherworldly, but it was the way Max Schreck moved that made Orlok so unsettling. Those subtle effeminate movements, creeping like a spider. There was also something haunting in the fact that he never spoke. By contrast, this Orlok doesn't shut up, which is a shame because his voice is way over the top. The longer the film went on, the harder I found it to understand what the fuck he was saying. There were times I was putting so much effort trying to decipher what was being said, I kind of lost the atmosphere of the scene. I also found it a shame they felt the need to cover Bill Skarsgård in prosthetics. Skarsgård was great in it because he could use his own facial mannerisms to give Pennywise that psychotic personality. Skarsgård has proven that he doesn't need tons of makeup to be scary. I have seen some commentators praising Skarsgård, saying you wouldn't even know it was him in Nosferatu. Well, of course you wouldn't, because he's wearing about 17 tons of shit on his face and he's wearing a pair of stilts. That's not to say I completely hated this performance. There were some nice touches, like the ragged undead breathing when he spoke. Another thing that didn't help Skarsgård was that Willem Dafoe is in this movie. I kept thinking that the new version of Orlok was not in the same league as the incarnation invoked by Willem Dafoe in Shadow of the Vampire.
Why him, you monster? Why not the script girl? The script girl. I'll eat her later. No.
That was a truly incredible performance, and it isn't often that you see John Malkovich out-villained in a movie.
Love your work.
But Dafoe's performance was truly breathtaking, and he was unfortunate to narrowly miss out on an Oscar. I did enjoy Ralph Ineson's performance. It's nice to see how far he's come since playing Finchy in The Office, or Theon Greyjoy's child-burning sidekick. Emma Corrin soldiered on admirably. Nicholas Hoult was mostly harmless. But Lily Rose Depp was terrible. I actually winced in pain every time she was on screen. Her delivery was just so dull and uninteresting. I know her character is supposed to be a bit kooky, but shows some fucking emotion. Aaron Taylor-Johnson's Friedrich was way over the top. Isn't he supposed to be German? So why is he talking like Cambridge University threw up all over him?
Oh yes, old boy, tally ho, boff boff. Rah rah rah, we're going to smash the oinks. I'm going to give those dastardly vampires a bunch of 5, what?
And why is this guy now suddenly everywhere? I'm going to report him for stalking because he's basically impossible to get away from. Now we get to the ugly. Eggers obviously felt the need to sex up the original Nosferatu story, but I don't know what he was trying to achieve, because for me, these over-sexualized scenes didn't really add anything. They didn't invoke a feeling of revulsion, or leave an indelible mark like the visceral rape scene in Irreversible. If anything, they added a comedic element. We see Orlok waving his junk at Hutter.
Boy, am I glad to see you.
Then we have the angry sex between John and Ellen, which was absolutely hilarious. Everyone in the cinema were pissing themselves laughing. Then we got the truly bizarre scene, where Friedrich decides to shag his dead wife because that's what plague victims do apparently. Bring out your dead so I can give them a good seeing to. Eggers saved the worst till last, when the party of would-be vampire killers returned to Ellen's chamber in the final scene. John doesn't even raise an eyebrow about the fact that an undead zombie is still balls deep in his wife. Defoe's Eberhard seems even less bothered. You'd think he'd shed a tear for the young girl he's bonded with over the course of the movie, but he just seems happy that he's got another cat out of the exchange. I am probably being overly harsh on Nosferatu. I certainly didn't hate the movie. As I mentioned earlier, it's beautifully shot, and the cinematography is top-notch. The story, however, should have been much better. I don't think I've been so disappointed in a film. Every time I have visited the cinema for the last 6 months, I've been force-fed the trailer for this film, and it really got my hopes up. I was expecting a dark and terrifying gothic horror, but this movie completely missed the mark. I am sure there will be some hardcore Eggers fans who dismiss me as not understanding the movie, but to be honest, there wasn't really much to not understand. For me, it just felt like a huge missed opportunity.
Squeal, piggy, squeal.